154.
So we are at the bottom of the page, number 9, verse 9. So remember, we're talking about these lay contracts and how the rabbis would enforce them, not enforce them. We finished ketubas, and we're going to go back to ketubas in a second, but we're having a quick diversion into loans. We did this last time, but quickly, so I'm going to go through it again, and then we'll go on to the next part. So page 154, it's 3 lines from the bottom in the Hebrew. It's verse 9. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha hayad doresh l'shon hadyot. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha also allowed these lay contracts and would enforce them and interpret them. Ditanya, as it's written, Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha omer. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha says, Hamalveh et chavero. If you lend money to your fellow, lo yamashchenu yoter mechovo. You can't take as a pledge for the loan. We discussed it last week. You can't take as a pledge for the loan something that's worth more than the loan itself. Okay? So if the if the loan is $100, you can't take a $500 watch as your pledge that you're going to get paid back. It's got to roughly equal. I don't know how to stop that. I'm sorry. Well, I'll try. There. Okay.
You can't mortgage your house?
Yeah, that's what it means. The pledge itself can't be more than the loan. It can't be. Yeah. So don't jump all over that. Let's read the whole thing first, okay? Shekach kotevlo, because he says in the loan contract, okay? And remember, when it says he writes it, so he writes it in the loan contract, it means that this is standard language in a folk contract, a lay contract. So this isn't something from the Bible or from Jewish law in particular, but this became the custom. So they're quoting customary contracts that were written like this. Tashlumta Deidlach alai kol kabel dichi. The repayment that's due from you is just the payment that's due for you. So all you get is what I owe you. You don't get more, because you know how it would work, right? So when you work, okay, you didn't pay me back. I'll take the watch, but the watch is worth $500, and I only owe you $100. So you don't get more than you lent the person in the first place at all. Okay. And all right, and so really that's just proving to us that Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha honors that contract, even though it's not an official rabbinic contract. There's also some basic fairness there too, right? Okay, let's keep going. Tama de katav lehachi. All right, so is the reason that it's officially written there? Okay, so now is the reason that you can't take a pledge worth more than the loan only because it's written in the document, or is that just a general rule about oaths? I mean, about lending. About lending, is it? Okay? Or is it, I mean, what if it wasn't written in the contract? Could you then take the $500 watch and keep the $500 watch? Okay, now they're going to examine it a bit based on some previous law precedents. Ha ilo katav lehachi. But what if he didn't lo kanya? Because if it wasn't in there, would he not get possession of the watch? So let's see. Vaha ma Rabbi Yochanan. Because Rabbi Yochanan, we have a saying from Rabbi Yochanan. Mishkeno. All right, so Mishkan is a pledge. So there was a loan, and let's say there was the watch, the $500 watch in pledge. Okay? Veheshilo mashkan. For whatever reason, the lender gave back the watch before the loan was paid. I need my watch. Can you let me have it back? I just need it back. And the lender is generous enough to say, sure, you can have it back for now. We don't know exactly how the transaction took place. Umate. In the meantime, the borrower dies. So the watch is at his house. Okay. The law is shomto me'al gabe banav. The lender now can go to the house and take it from the heirs. Doesn't have to wait for probate. Doesn't have to wait for the will to be read. It belongs to him. He's allowed to take it. What does that teach us?
That he got something that was worth more.
Right. That he's got ownership dibs on the watch, no matter what it's worth. Right. So we learned. So this is a contradiction to what we just learned, because we had learned. Right. We had learned earlier that you can't take that and you can't keep more than the value of the loan. So what's going on here? Okay. Now I have to say, in some ways, this also sounds fair, because I mean the lender is taking a risk, and he has a right to some kind of pledge in return. And how's he going to assure that he's going to get paid back? And now the borrower dies, and he could be totally stuck. I mean, this guy could be bankrupt, and he may not get paid at all. So there is some basic fairness to he can go and take the watch. Yeah.
So could the heirs finish repaying the loan and then get the watch?
That's a good question. I think so, but I'm not sure. I'm actually inclined to think no, because I think the borrower just never paid it back, and as soon as he dies, he gets the watch. The guy gets the watch. I think, but I don't know. I'm gonna leave it at that at this point.
We didn't even talk about interest. That
No.
should have gotten.
Right. So interest is a much more complicated topic here, because first of all, it's not allowed in the Torah. It's explicitly forbidden, and yet the Talmud found ways to do it. So that's why it becomes a complicated issue. So luckily we're not, because it's
the cumulative value of that interest might
be right, exactly. Okay, but there's another topic which we will get to, is that things not only increase in value. Let's say it's land. Let's say the land is the pledge. Land can go up quite a bit in value, but what else can happen? It could go down. It could go down, and then the value of the land might be less than the loan.
Right.
So then it's the lender himself that's in trouble. Right, because the lender suddenly is stuck with a piece of property that's worth less than the original loan.
And he's at risk based on the value.
Right, so he takes a risk, yeah. So we're going to get to that too, yeah.
You had said something about that he could go claim that watch.
Yeah.
Implying that it's well beyond the period of the loan.
Yeah.
And that
it does imply that, yes.
Okay, but let's say within the period of the loan.
Right, so then it's not right. I think you're right about that. Again, we're not focusing on that, but I think you're right. I think at this point the loan is due. The loan is due. So he gets, it's not before the loan is due, because you have to give the guy a chance to pay it back, but the loan is due. He gets to go and take the watch. Okay, let's turn the page. All right. Ahane ketiva legeraon. So it says the reason you would write it so you don't have to write it. So you don't have to write this. When you don't have to write this thing that all you get from me is a watch that's worth 100. By the way, there is an implication here that isn't really true to life. That it's possible. Like you're lending me $100 and I'm giving you a watch, and this watch is worth exactly $100. So, right. I mean, the valuing of a thing is always going to be approximate. Plus, it can go up and down. So it does open the door to complications. So it's saying the reason you would write it, that you get exactly a watch that's worth $100, you would write that because it in fact does benefit the lender in the event that the watch itself depreciates in value. Because if the loan was 100 and suddenly the guy can only get 70 for the watch, then the borrower has to make it up. Because that was written in the contract. What was written in the contract is you get from me what I borrowed from you, and nothing more, nothing less. That's what's in the contract. That's implied. Okay? That's why you have it written, because it benefits not only the borrower but also the lender. The lender also, because the lender has to protect himself from the fact that the pledge can depreciate. Is that clear?
Yeah. But you have the other situation where the property could then be sold. The borrower, I should say the lender, takes out his money, whatever total it comes to, and then the balance is given back to either the borrower or to his heirs.
Yes, right to the heirs.
Does this ever come?
It does, yeah. It does, yeah. I'm not going to delve too deeply into this because it's not really about that. It's really about the rabbis are honoring lay contracts, despite the fact that they're not written specifically how they're supposed to. Plus, we're going to get back to some ketubas, which are always interesting. So let's do that. Okay. And I'll tell you that this opens up a subject which is very interesting to me. Just some cultural differences when it comes to marriage, and also just in general cultural differences. And you'll see what I mean in a second. Actually, it'll become clear. So Rabbi Yossi hayat doresh l'shon hedyot. So Rabbi Yossi, another rabbi. So we have all sorts of rabbis. Obviously, we could stop this discussion, but they enjoy it to show how the rabbis had to deal with what were basically folk customs, and they codified them into law. So Rabbi Yossi would do it too. Tanya, as it's written, Rabbi Yossi Omer. So Rabbi Yossi would say, Makom shenahagu lasot ktuba milveh, goveh milveh. Okay, this is already interesting, but it gets more interesting. In a place where it was standard for the ketubah to come into being as a loan, then, I'll translate that and explain it, then the husband would collect the loan. This is how it works. So first we have to understand what a ketubah is. So a ketubah guarantees a certain amount of money to the wife in the event of the dissolution of the marriage, which could happen through divorce or the groom dies. The wife is guaranteed a certain amount of money. Right now in our ketubas, there's a statutory amount in there. It's 200 zuz for a non-married, for a first marriage. 200 zuz. So if the husband dies, or there's a divorce, someone has to pay the wife 200 zuz. Good luck finding zuz nowadays, but that's what's written in the standard ketubah. Okay, and when ketubas meant something, and I'll tell you what I mean in a second, it protected the wife. 200 zuz was a lot of money. It was approximately a yearly salary for a middle class, well-off person. So the wife then gets the 200 zuz. Okay, now, so what happens is in marriages, it floated more in those days. The statutory amount hadn't been picked yet. And you would maybe handle a bit, negotiate. What's the amount? Okay? So let's say you came up with 200 zuz. And so the father of the groom, the father of the bride, because that's who you're negotiating with, says, okay, we're going to put 200 in the ketubah. That's what you owe my daughter if you run out on her. Because we need to protect my daughter. That's what you owe her if you run out on her. Let me see the money. Show me the money. So the groom, because how am I going to trust you? How am I going to trust that you've got 200 zuz? So I need to know that you've got it, that you're worth it. So the groom says, I don't have that. I'm 20 years old. I'm just starting in life. I've got nothing. So the father of the bride says, I'll tell you what I'll do. I will lend you the money. I will lend you the money. That way we protect my daughter. Because it's in his interest to protect the daughter. So I'll lend you the money. We'll put it in an account.
That's gross.
Or you know what? I'll give you a loan document. The loan document is I owe you 200 zuz in the event that there's a divorce. Okay, so where all this practice here is implied in these words, in a place where that's done, the groom then can collect the 200 zuz in the event of the divorce, and then gives it over to the wife. So in effect, it's the father that's paying but he didn't have the money, so it's a loan. Okay, now.
At what point is that? The actual marriage, or at the point in which they get engaged?
Well, it's before. Yeah, it's the engagement. It's the negotiations that happen before the engagement, but the ketubah is signed right before the marriage. Right. Let me finish the statement, and then we'll take questions, because here it gets even more complicated. Okay. Lichpol goveh mechitza. Okay, so if the amount was doubled, all the groom can collect and therefore give to the bride is half. So let me explain what's going on here. Okay, so there's the statutory ketubah has 200 zuz, which I said is a lot of money. Now, the groom says, you know what? Other grooms, they may give you 200 zuz. Your daughter is worth so much to me, I'm going to put 400 in that ketubah. I'm going to put 800 in the ketubah. Just to show you how much I love and value you and our friendship, we're putting 800 in the ketubah. So the father says, well, you've got 800, and by the way, you're borrowing it from me. So, how is that even impressing? So, in the culture, the culture would be you put 400 in there, so everybody understands. Oh, your wife is worth more than me than the You think I would just put the statutory amount? Your daughter, she's worth much more than me. Just to give her honor, I'm going to put 400 zuz in there. Now, am I actually going to give her 400? No, no. The whole it's all as a sense to honor her, and it doesn't actually have a legal meaning. Now, I know this is going to upset some of you because it's not our culture, but because in our culture a contract's a contract. In that culture, the contract was the wedding document, and we allow ourselves to put exaggerations in the wedding document, understanding that they're exaggerations. We have this unspoken understanding among all of us, oh, he didn't really mean 400. He couldn't afford 400. He meant 200. So once you see the 400 in the ketubah, what it means is he only owes 200. And I'll tell you now, this became real to me. I did a bunch of weddings in my career, and suddenly I do a wedding. I won't mention the culture, although a lot of different cultures buy into this. I'll give you two examples. So one is you look at the ketubah, and I'm expecting 200 zuz in the ketubah, which by the way means nothing because there's no such thing as zuz. In any way, it's a religious document, and in our culture, there's a separation of church and state. So you can't. The ketubah is not legally operative. You can't enforce a ketubah in the United States. It's actually been adjudicated. You can't enforce it because it's a religious document, and in our country we have a separation of church and state, and you can't enforce it. So there's a ketubah, and the case where it came before courts was something similar to this one. I did a ketubah. I come to the amount. It says $1 million, and I'm like, Wait a second, it's supposed to say 200 zuz here, and am I reading this correctly? It says $1 million. So why does it say $1 million? For that, to show how much I love and appreciate your daughter. I'm not going to say 200 if I leave her. I'm telling you, I'm never going to leave her. I'll put $1 million in there. So now you say, like, are you going to really give her $1 million? Well, that's just what's in the document. It's just a way for me to express my love and my support and my undying, commitment to her. So at one point, these $1 million ketubas, which became standard practice in a certain community, were brought to court. A bride wanted to collect her $1 million. And the judge said, it's a separation of church and state in this country. So it's not, if you show me a secular document that doesn't have in the name of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and it was actually brought up before. But here, this is a religious document, so I can't enforce it. And but it goes to show that these cultural differences, where you would put something in a contract that you don't mean, just as a kind of flattery for the bride, actually was pretty standard. It was standard in the days of the Talmud. By the way, an Eastern culture, not a Western culture. So I'll tell you one other quick story, too, just to show you how this isn't so uncommon. I mean, people don't always... We don't have to necessarily buy into our cultural assumptions, especially this congregation, we got Jews from all over the place, and people grow up with different customs, and we have to be tolerant to that. So one time, I'd done a wedding, and sometimes I can stay for the party, sometimes I can't. It depends what's going on in my life, and so I couldn't stay. So I did the ceremony. I didn't stay for the party, and and I said goodbye and said, well, aren't you staying for the party? And I sent in my RSVP. I wasn't staying for the party, and they said, I said, no, I'm sorry, with all my apologies, and they said, well, but we have a place card for you, and we have a place for you, and I said. And I went through my head and I thought, gosh, did I RSVP? Was that a mistake? I was going to apologize. And I said, and I remembered, I specifically remembered, RSVPing that I couldn't come. And they said, so I said, well, I'm actually a little surprised that you have a place card for me because I RSVP'd that I couldn't come. And they said, oh, we didn't think you meant that. We thought you were just being polite, like you didn't want to, that was something in the culture, like you didn't want to bother them and don't make a meal for me, and but they didn't think it meant I wasn't going to come. So I mean, it's sort of like depends what culture you grow up in, and so same thing with these ketubas also. There's and now what's interesting is Rabbi Yossi is codifying the whole thing because he understands the system, and he says. In a place where it's natural to put double the amount you actually intend to pay, you only get to collect half. Okay, I'm going to keep going.
One thing more.
Yeah.
How about the Sharia laws in this? Isn't it happening, at least we read about it, rumored, that the government is accepting Sharia law for negotiations?
See, I haven't heard that at all. I don't know.
Haven't?
Yeah.
In England,
Yeah, that seems very unlikely to me because of the ketubah cases. The court was very quick to just say we don't have any. This has no authority. Yeah, but who knows? Look, I'm not an expert, and yeah.
I contend that you can make an exchange for the 2 zuz that don't. 200 zuz. 200. Because a kid is worth 2 zuz.
Yeah, you're right.
So therefore, 100 goats should satisfy.
That should satisfy exactly.
That's right. The point is that she was property too.
Yeah, I mean there are people, by the way, that put stuff in the ketubah. And they say, for the most famous is the Lieberman clause, is in the event of a dissolution of this marriage, we agree to go to a Beit Din and get a get. So you put that in. And it's happened also that, a get is a Jewish divorce. And there's a problem sometimes with recalcitrant husbands who won't give the get, and therefore the bride can't get remarried.
Right.
Or vice versa, by the way, husband also can't get married. So in Jewish law. So then it's in there, right? It's in the ketubah, and it's happened that one of them refuses, so they take it to court, a secular court, and the secular court says, this isn't our document. We don't enforce this. This is church and state. Go to your rabbi. Have your rabbi enforce it. So it's the same thing. Like that was taken to court. So the fact that it's in the ketubah or other things are in the ketubah means that it's moral suasion. The rabbi could point to that and say, hey, look, you agreed to this, but it doesn't have any legal validity in our country. It might in other countries, but in our country, it doesn't have any legal validity.
So
okay.
we translate it into a prenup.
Yeah, we do. And a prenup, of course, you get done officially according to our laws. It's not a
But
ketubah.
then you
Yeah.
write the prenup and then
Yeah.
you fight it once.
And you fight it, right? Yeah, yeah. With the ketubah, you can't even fight it. I
I
mean,
really didn't mean that.
yeah, right. Yeah. Right, exactly.
Is it legal in Israel?
Yeah, I think ketubahs are legal in Israel, but that's a good question. I don't really know.
What was
Yeah.
the question?
Are ketubahs legally enforceable in Israel? And the answer is, it seems like maybe they could be, but I don't know. Okay, let me read this. Go on, page 157. Nehar Blai Gavu Tilta. So in the town of Nehar Bela in Babylonia, they would only collect a third. So in other words, their practice was to triple the statutory amount.
There you go.
Yeah. And so therefore, when it came time to collect the ketubah, you only got a third, because we understood that it was all exaggeration. All right, go on. Maremar magbe nami shvacha. So Maremar actually allowed the bride, was really the husband and through the bride, to collect. The shvacha means the extra, but the word shvach in Hebrew means the praised amount. So in other words, it praise, like I am praising the bride by giving you more. Maremar said, no, you put that in the ketubah, you got to pay it. So he had a different system. Okay, now keep going. Amar le Ravina le Maremar, but Ravina said to Maremar, V'hatanya, but wait a second, we have it in an official writing, official Mishnah, lichpol gove mechzed. It actually says if the custom is to double, you only collect half. Okay. Lo kasha. So he says, no, there's actually not a contradiction. Hadekane mine. So one case, when you do collect it, when there's an official kinyan. A kinyan is, actually it's pulling, probably some of you have seen it before at weddings, things like that. You pull in a handkerchief or you pull in a pen. And so an official kinyan means that it actually is legally valid and you acquire it. So if they did that, if they had the kinyan, then you have to pay the full amount. So be careful when you're a groom, when you're writing the ketubah, make sure you don't do a kinyan, otherwise you're liable for the full amount. Ha de lo kane mine. So the reason, and when you don't collect the whole amount, you only collect half, that's when there wasn't a kinyan. Okay? I want to finish this because it's a cute little thing here. Ravina mashbach v'katev lebarte. So we had a simcha. Ravina's daughter got married. So Ravina's daughter got married, and of course he put in the extra. So for my daughter, you're putting in 400. You're not just putting 200 zuz in the ketubah, because I have to see that you value my daughter. Okay, Amrule. The groom says, Nikme mine mar. So the groom says to him, let's do a kinyan, because he wants the full amount.
Right.
Amar lehu. So Ravina says back to him, Im mikna lo michpal. So if we're doing a kinyan, we're not doubling it. I'm going back to the original amount. Im michpal lo mikna. But if I double it, I'm not doing a kinyan. So Ravina knows the law, right? And he wants the extra amount, but he doesn't want to have to be responsible for it. He just wants it as a way to praise the bride, his daughter, and not so he actually has to pay the money. Okay.
Are you satisfied with this English translation? If a layperson were to read this, he would be totally confused.
What's that? So
the terminology.
if there is an active acquisition, there is no doubling. If there is doubling, there is no active acquisition. Active acquisition is a kinyan.
Right.
Doubling means the extra amount that you put in.
Yeah, with your commentary.
Well, yeah, so it's much easier with the translation and commentary. If you read the Steinsaltz translation and commentary, it makes it a lot clearer. The Talmud uses very clipped language, very,
If there is a kinyan, there has to be witnesses to that.
Yeah.
And after how many years
and something
somebody
signed.
will remember.
Oh, but it would be signed. The ketubah itself would say.
It would be signed.
Yeah, there'd be witnesses to the ketubah. Yeah, it's not the witnesses that do the kinyan, it's the bride and groom that do the kinyan, and the witnesses sign it, and they attest that they saw the kinyan. So when you have the document, then it would be clear. Yeah, it would be in the document, right?
Why holding the end of a handkerchief?
Yeah.
Yeah, usually it's a hanger.
Yeah,
Why?
yeah.
A church.
Why is the
It's like a handshake. I mean, different customs have different, but then you don't just rely on the handshake.
No.
It's like Irv said. Like Morris said, you rely on the witnesses that witnessed the handshake, and they signed it.
Yeah.
So then you've got proof that it happened.
Why is the
Yeah.
bride's father concerned with the amount of money?
Because it's his daughter. He wants his daughter to be respected.
He wants his daughter to be respected, but yet he doesn't want to pay double.
Yeah, I
He
know,
doesn't want to
exactly.
pay double.
Yeah.
But he's not
Yeah.
paying it. The groom is paying.
So this is all goes back to the original cases. He's lending the money to the groom to pay because the groom's got no money.
Right.
You know, it's Perchik. He's got no money, but Tevye is saying, look, I can't have my daughter have zero in her ketubah. That doesn't look good. We're going to put $800 in there, and you know what, Perchik, I'll lend you the money. Don't worry about it.
So
Yeah.
Perchek is still responsible to the father afterwards to
In
pay
the
back the
event-
money.
He's
Yeah.
No, he's actually not. He's not. He's actually not the father. Yes, no, you're right. You're right. So eventually, he's got to pay back the money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta
Yeah.
cut out a lot of tailors.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. All right, we'll stop there.
That's all you got. That's all you got.
Actually, I should have said Motel. You're right. It wasn't Perchik, but they were both poor. Motel and Perchik were both poor. Yeah, so.